Snap elections in Thailand filled with tension. Ukraine's political crisis dominates international security conference. And locally, the search for a location to separate local and mainland poultry.
Good evening. We begin in Thailand, where today's nationwide election was wrought with violence in Bangkok after last night's gun battles set the tone. And once voting got underway, there was pushing and shoving between protesters and pro-government supporters. Sonia Artero has our top story.
Gunshots rang out at a major intersection in Bangkok where protesters and government supporters clashed. The standoff lasted an hour and sent the masses running for cover. At least 7 people were wounded, including an American photojournalist who was shot in the leg. In another part of the capital, pro-government red shirt supporters began attacking a man driving a car who they suspected of being an opposition supporter. Taking no chances, caretaker Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra today cast her vote under heavy police security. But there was chaos elsewhere in the capital. Furious residents were blocked from casting their votes at many polling stations. Voting ended in the afternoon. Overall, at least 488 of the 6,600 polling stations in Bangkok reported disruptions. Voters in the Ding Dang district scuffled with protesters and hurled bottles at each other. One witness saw a protester firing off a gun after angry voters pushed their way past a blockade. This politician got into a knockdown, drag-out punching brawl with a group of protesters. He insisted protesters attacked him while he tried to vote. What does all this mean for Yingluck? Because the protesters blocked candidates from registering in many districts, Parliament will not have enough members to convene. That means even with a Yingluck victory, she'll be unable to form a government or even pass a budget. And Thailand will be stuck in political limbo for months. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
The opposing sides of Ukraine's political crisis have been sparring at an annual security meeting of top diplomats and security chiefs in Germany. James Aiken has more on how the upheaval is turning into a tug of war between Russia and the West.
The Munich Security Conference is known as a venue for frank exchanges in an informal setting. But with Ukraine's turmoil topping the agenda this year, opposition leaders seized the opportunity to raise the volume on their pleas for Western support.
On the table is the future of my country. And we are eager to do our utmost in order to resolve this political and economic crisis. Sanctions are on the table, and this is one of the tools that is to be exercised in order to stabilize the situation in Ukraine.
The frosty atmosphere was amplified when Ukraine's foreign minister took direct aim at opposition leaders, telling them they must share responsibility for the crisis.
Are you with the extremist groups who wear some logos and emblems looks like Nazi-style emblems on them? Are you with them? If you are leading the opposition, please be also responsible, and let's share that kind of responsibility.
The United States and Europe held private meetings with the opposition to reaffirm their support while condemning the excessive use of force by Ukraine's security forces in their crackdown on protesters. But Russia's foreign minister slammed Western support for the opposition, suggesting it's helping to escalate the violence. The protests began when Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych decided to back away from a European Union deal in favor of stronger ties with Moscow. At least 6 people have been killed in the past 2 weeks in intensifying street battles with police. In a rare intervention on Friday, Ukraine's defense ministry urged the president to move swiftly within the law to end the crisis. James Aiken, TVB News.
Also at the Munich conference, the NATO Secretary General has stressed the need for a new security agreement in Afghanistan. That would allow international forces to remain in the country after this year.
If we are not present in Afghanistan after 2014, it might also be difficult to generate financial support for the sustainment of the Afghan security forces. They will need international financial assistance to pay salaries. And if they don't get that assistance, how can they afford to pay salaries? And in that case, the Afghan security forces will really be faced with serious challenges.
Meanwhile, campaigning is officially underway in Afghanistan for the presidential election in April. 11 candidates are vying to succeed President Hamid Karzai.
Rescue efforts have resumed after a volcano in Indonesia erupted yesterday, killing at least 16 people. It happened just one day after authorities allowed thousands of evacuated villagers to return to their homes nearby. Mount Sinabung in western Sumatra has become increasingly active in the past 4 months. Authorities had evacuated more than 30,000 people from the area, but allowed almost half of them to return home, believing the eruptions had decreased. Yesterday, the volcano thundered back to life with a series of huge blasts. It's the first time the volcano has been known to claim lives. Indonesia is prone to seismic upheaval due to its location on an arc of volcanoes and fault lines known as the Pacific Ring of Fire. And locally, plans to separate local and mainland poultry are now gathering steam amid the bird flu scare. Meanwhile, Guangdong has reported its 9th H7N9 death. According to mainland authorities, the 63-year-old man lived in Shenzhen's Longgang district. He died after testing positive for the bird flu virus. He's the 9th H7N9 death reported in Guangdong. Meanwhile, a 6-year-old Hong Kong boy who tested positive for H7N9 has been released from a Shenzhen hospital. He's now under clinical observation at home with mild symptoms. The boy began showing early signs of flu last Monday before visiting Hong Kong with his family the next day. When asked why health officials at the border failed to spot him, Secretary for Food and Health Koh Eng-man said it's possible to miss some cases at the border crossing because people can show different symptoms. Koh said the government has already strengthened monitoring over the past few days amid an influx of visitors during the holiday period. And on calls to separate local and mainland poultry to prevent cross-contamination, the health chief said the government may start looking for land near the Mankam-to crossing where birds from across the border would be kept pending test results. This comes after mainland chickens infected with H7N9 led to a mass culling of 20,000 chickens, including the local stock, much to the anger of the Hong Kong poultry trade. There have been calls from the industry to ban importing mainland poultry, but agricultural sector lawmaker Stephen Ho said that's not necessary. Ho told TVB News today as long as quarantine is carried out properly, it doesn't matter where the poultry comes from. The key issue now is to find a place to keep local and imported stock separately to prevent cross-contamination.
There's been a surge in the number of patients at the accident and emergency units at public hospitals during the Lunar New Year period. As Rani Samtani reports, the hospital authority is urging those with mild flu symptoms to seek treatment at outpatient clinics or with private doctors.
Public hospitals have seen a surge in patients during the festive period. This is also the peak flu season. The number of patients seeking treatment at the accident and emergency units yesterday, the second day of the Year of the Horse, was 30% more than on the first day of the Lunar New Year.
I would like to take this opportunity to appeal to the public. If you suffered from minor illness, please visit your family doctor or go to the general outpatient clinic operated by our hospital authority.
Last month, an average of 2,100 patients sought treatment at the accident and emergency units at public hospitals every day. That's 10% more than usual. Tuen Mun Hospital is especially busy dealing with a high number of patients. Some patients had to wait for 4 to 6 hours or even the entire night before getting to see a doctor at the A&E units. To handle increasing demand during the Lunar New Year period, the hospital authority raised the quota at 12 general outpatient clinics by 30%, or 1,500 consultations.
The medical wards are also under pressure. There were several days in January that saw more than 1,000 patients admitted after being treated at the emergency room. And in some cases, patients were forced to sleep on temporary beds in the corridors because there is simply not enough space in the wards. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
And still ahead in the news tonight. More Lunar New Year festivities around town. Remembering Oscar winner Maximilian Schell. And no end in sight to Man U's troubles.